And this is going to be fairly, fairly a quick getting information out to you, regarding some of those resources that I mentioned. We're going to show you how to find those resources as well when we come to the end of the session. Just a quick introduction. I am Jill Pellegrini, and I'm Director of Professional Development for iLearn Collaborative. Rosemary, do you want to introduce yourself really quickly?
Yeah, I'm Rosemary Sweat. I do development, course development and design, and I'm the lead facilitator for courses with iLearn Collaborative right now.
Yes. In our education background is, between the two of us, we have over 40 years in education in this space. We've been traditional classroom teachers, experiential learning, project-based learning. We were 100% virtual. At one point, actually, we were both at the same school for that. And then we both transitioned to a blended model where we had an enriched virtual model, saw our students a few times a week, and then our students engage with online curriculum. So that's a little bit about our education background. We did get into teacher training, course development, professional development, and then, of course, that led us to ILC. So if you're not familiar with ILC, iLearn Collaborative, we really are about equity in education, culturally responsive teaching, student-centered learning. We help districts, schools, and teachers transition to a one-to-one model or engage in some tech integration that really improves and advances their own instructional practice. We do provide consulting services to districts. We provide professional development. We have a course catalog of over 30 professional development courses for teachers in blended instruction, personalized learning, and now we're getting into culturally responsive teaching practices as well. And best practices in online instruction, which is a course that is going to be coming summer 2020. So we are responding to the demand from our educators that need more specific training on online instruction. So that is forthcoming. We also have something called a digital content warehouse. Just so you're aware, this is a warehouse that is available to individual educators as well as districts. It is under open educational resources, and we have over 70 courses, content templates that teachers can use for digital curriculum in online instruction. Pardon me, I'm just admitting somebody else to our session today. Okay, so today's agenda is we are going to review some of the best practices and some digital resources. And like I said, some of you, you may be the experts on this in this webinar, and please feel free to interject at any time. If you have an awesome resource that you've been using, or a tip or a strategy that you've been using that's been really, really successful, we want to hear about it during this webinar. So please feel free to interrupt at any time. You could also put it into the chat box if you'd rather do that, and then we'll stop and we'll acknowledge that something popped in there. We'll have a little bit of time for a Q&A, and then we're going to share some of our resources from today's session. So I think the number one thing is communication is key, and I love, Elizabeth, you really drove this home when you said, I am either seeing my kids or I am speaking with my kids constantly. And that is absolutely how we're going to get the engagement that we want to see with our families. Make sure, especially as Elizabeth brought up, make sure that you have the correct contact information for your families. Some families may not have access to phone service, cell phones, and so forth, but in some may be changing living arrangements during this chaotic time. So it's really, really essential to be on top of that. If you do not have the contact information for your families, there are different ways you could reach out to your administrators, counselors, and so forth, maybe up to date on that. You also can utilize community members. In some cases with our students that we are, contact information is changing. There are ways, through faith, in other community aspects that we could reach out to our families and make sure that we're in contact with them. Another thing is making sure your families understand how to get in touch with you. So if you know, one thing that I recommend is Google Voice. If you have not used Google Voice, it is an excellent app tool to use so that your teachers and you are not providing your personal phone number when you are calling your families. You can do text messaging, phone calls, group messaging, voicemails that you could leave that go out to your families. It's an excellent app to utilize. And again, this ensures that your personal information is private, but at the same time, you're able to connect with your families, which is what we want to make sure happens. So having them know how to get in touch with you is absolutely essential. Setting a schedule for phone calls. It would be ideal if you could schedule that with your students and your parents, knowing that, you know, at this time every week we're going to be doing a phone conversation, or you're going to be doing your synchronous session online, whether you're using, you know, Zoom and you're securing it with your families, as Elizabeth has done with her district, or you're using Google or your LMS conferencing tool, whatever the case is, you want to schedule so that they know, hey, I know Mrs. Pellegrini is going to be reaching out to me at this time and checking to see how I'm doing. You know, that's really important. Another thing is, you know, just asking some essential questions. How are you doing? What's working? What's not working? How can I best support you? What do you need from me? You know, especially in these times, this is really essential. Group messaging. So for some of our higher functioning students, I'm so sorry. Pardon me, one moment. I'm gonna pause. Okay.
I have a question for you guys while she's doing that.
Yes.
On this Google Voice, so it's just an app?
Yes, it's just an app. And we have a link to that as well, so we'll share that at the end of the webinar.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So we have all the links connected to the resources that we recommend. I apologize. This is the joys of working from home. One of my children is supposed to be babysitting for me. They're dropping the ball. Okay. They're online schooling, so, you know, I can't complain about that. Group messaging, that's another thing, talking about Google Voice, that Google Voice has that option as well. And especially when we're talking about our students with special needs, our higher functioning students, and it's completely acceptable to be able to send some group messaging out there. Hey, everybody, checking in. You know, and sometimes it's just touching base. You know, are you enjoying the nice weather today? And letting them know you're connecting with them. Every single contact that you have with your students and families, it doesn't always have to be about school. You know, sometimes it's just letting them know, hey, we're all in this together. What could I do? How are you doing? You know, what's happening here? Especially, it's going to let you know if you have to really provide some social emotional support at this time. Temp checks. I love temp checks. I don't know if any of you use the temp checks, but utilizing Google Forms is one way to send out a survey. You could also use SurveyMonkey, which is free.
Hi, friends.
And
today we're talking about our book, Taking Care of Our Body.
Oops. Sorry, that wasn't on my end. I'm not sure where that came from. So anyhow, as I was saying, you know, a nice thing is also with the temp checks is you could ask them to provide some additional information in that form that you send out to them. It's just another way to communicate with them, to get some additional information about how they're doing, what they need specifically, because sometimes, you know, if they're having a conversation, it's not going to come to mind. You know, it's not going to be off the top of their heads, you know, what kind of support that they need, but a Google form gives them time to process and really articulate, you know, if there's something. Synchronous meetings, we already talked about that. Google Meet, LMS conferencing, keep a schedule for those as well. Make sure that the students and the parents know when those are. You can do general ones where you invite your parents to come to those synchronous sessions. So that way you have your students, you have your parents, you could really drive home communication. Hey, this is what's happening this week. This is what we need to be focusing on, and so forth. Or you could do your separate sessions, you know, so whatever's going to work for your schedule. The important thing is to have a schedule. Okay. Instructional tips, either working with case managers. If you're a content teacher, your case managers know your students with special needs better than anyone. They know how to modify assignments. I know as an educator myself, I relied so much on my case managers. We really had a collaboration. This is what's happening this week. Here's the weekly schedule of what I want my students to do. How do I modify this to help my individual students with special needs? So they're the experts, rely on them. Other way around, if you're a case manager, you want to talk to your content teachers because they will understand, okay, you know, we're working on a writing assignment. This is how I want to chunk this particular assignment and break it down for my students. So let's figure out the best way to do that together. Another thing is exploring assistive technology. We do have some great tools that we'll be sharing in this webinar for text to speech. If you don't know any off the bat, we have a plethora of different tools. It can be overwhelming. I know Read and Write for Google is excellent. Google or Chrome Vox is another extension that you could use. Both of those tools are excellent tools for text to speech for your students. And it also, for teaching language skills across the curricula, incorporates students' native languages, use videos, or direct students to resources that are in their native language. So for our ELL students, again, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can find tons of content out there, and we do have some resources that we're sharing, or you can digitize your own content. So if you have something that you want to digitize for your students, you have that ability as well. Another thing is we really like reading eggs. I don't know if you're familiar with reading eggs. It's a fantastic digital resource for learners. It breaks it down into basic reading skills. There's also Study Island, and the cool thing about Study Island is you can put your own instructional assessments and so forth into Study Island for your students. So you have the ability to manipulate that resource for them. And IXL has some great ones. Rosemary, do you want to talk a little bit about this section?
You just covered it very well, actually. It's just like you said, Reading Eggs is a really basic, kind of a lower level resource for kids. You know, higher level students wouldn't benefit from that, but some of your lower level learners would definitely benefit from the Reading Eggs. And as Jill said, Study Island can also be customized and personalized a little bit so that, you know, you can put in what you need for those kids to be, you know, what objectives and they need to get out of their learning assessments and things like that. So IXL I'm not super familiar with. I know my kids used it for math, and I just know that it adapts to their level. So I think that's a good one, and I think it has reading as well. But I know they used it for math.
And that's awesome.
I have a question. Oh.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I'm pretty sure Study Island is a purchase service, kind of.
It is, but they're offering it because of the coronavirus and COVID-19. That's why we put that in there, because Study Island is usually a purchase also, and I guess that's probably what I should jump in and say is that those two are offering free services for the next little while. So if you want to use those while you have the opportunity, that's a great resource to have.
Yeah.
Good question. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, that is great. And Rosemary and I have been finding, as we've been doing our own research, tons of these tools that normally, as you said, were things that you would purchase as an educator. They are now offering free for the rest of the year. So, and we have some of those that we'll be sharing with you. The last thing that we wanted to bring up was a help desk. This is another way that your families can connect with you whenever they need to. So it doesn't have to be limited to the weekly schedule of phone calls and synchronous sessions. Having a help desk somewhere is a great way to connect with your families. You can use an LMS discussion board, which we have used in the past, where we just have, hey, any questions you're having for the week, put them into this discussion board. I check it every single day. So that way it gives students and parents that option to utilize that. You could also use a Post-it note board. And that's a Padlet. If you are not familiar with Padlet, Padlet is free. And Elizabeth, LMS, I'm sorry. Thank you for interrupting and asking what that is. I appreciate that question. Learning management.
I answered it in the chat, Jill. But you go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Rosemary.
Go ahead.
And for anybody else that didn't know, it's in the chat, but when I use LMS, and I apologize for not adding the clarification in here, but that is going to be your Google Classroom, which isn't a full LMS, but it is a fabulous digital platform and very, very close to becoming a full learning management system like Schoology, Canvas, those types of other LMSs, learning management systems. And they can also, you could set those up for free. Just so you know, there are free instructor accounts for Canvas, for Schoology, and Google Classroom as well. So great place to have a hub or to have a help desk set up for your families. The Post-it note board is digital, and you could put it right inside of an LMS, or you can share a link with your families, and basically they just click it, open it up, click, and they could put a little Post-it note on there. And it could be a question, it could be, you could put fun things. You could have like a Post-it note board where every Monday you put some fun, a funny comic strip, or, something that your families will be excited, or your students are excited to check out every week. Mrs. Pellegrini's going to put something funny on there, or clue, some type of puzzle that they have to figure out, which is always awesome for like math and things like that. So just another way to connect with your families. And again, emphasizing it doesn't always have to be about academics. Sometimes it's just, we need that relationship, we need that connection, and as a result, we're going to get the engagement that we want to see as well. And then it's also a great place to house your resources. So that is all that we have. These are just some main takeaways that we want everyone to keep in mind as they approach making sure that all the needs of their students are met, and in particular, making sure they understand their students with special needs, and being up on, what modifications need to be made, but also our English language learners. And we have resources we're going to share with you. Rosemary's going to put it in the chat. And we wanted to end with Rita Pearson. I don't know if you know who Rita Pearson is. She's amazing. If you've ever seen any of her TED Talks, she is so inspirational, but she really is about every single student, just being that cheerleader for that student, and if you're not engaging, if a particular student's not engaging, this is the time to find out why, to really, really reach out and make sure that you have that connection with that student especially now with everything going on. So, but this is going to be the resource that Rosemary is sharing. And if you look at this resource, we will update this resource every week, or every time we have a recorded session, we're going to update this. If you look at your tabs at the bottom, these are ILC links. You could see we have a YouTube channel. So from starting today, after today's webinar, we're going to record our sessions. So that way you don't have to worry about, hey, I have to, be here at 12 for this webinar, or I missed a webinar, or whatever the case may be. So we're going to include videos on that YouTube channel, and you can access our resource library. So we're going to have instructional videos. We're going to keep them going through the rest of this year. We're going to keep them after we get through this remote learning period. We're going to keep with online instruction tips and tricks, as well as some blended instruction content. So you can subscribe to that channel, and we'll have all of our content there. And then, of course, our website, way to contact us. And then also we're sharing the CDE guidance on e-learning technology. This is a fabulous resource. If you have not visited the site or received this toolkit, we highly recommend. We did work in collaboration under CEL to provide some of our own expertise, but this is a resource you definitely want to check out. These will be dates and topics for the upcoming videos that we will be recording through the month of April. And then you could see recorded links we'll keep here, as well as on our YouTube channel. And then you'll see all the resources. So if you missed any of our webinars, you could check out the recordings, and then you could also check out our links. And here are the links for today. So there's quite a few here, and we had a really hard time narrowing it, didn't we, Rosemary? It was just, there was so much good stuff out there, but at the same time, as Rosemary is really good at reminding me, don't overwhelm. I'm the type where it's like, let's give them everything. So she's great at, reeling me in and saying, no, let's think of essential things that we want them to walk away with. And that's what we have come up with on this tab. So any questions on that?
I don't have a question on that document. I have a different question. Is now the time to ask? Or
Oh, yeah.
So in terms of one of the tensions that I feel sometimes is, we have some kids that are dually identified, right? So our ELL and special ed, and there's a different special ed coordinator, and I'm the ELL coordinator. And sometimes it's hard for me to figure out, how much should we have, like, so for example, with these Zoom meetings, so we're having Zooms, like check-ins with many students once or twice a week. But they're like, these special ed kids are also getting a lot of other resources as well. And basically my question is, do you think that, like, what is a good, I don't know, what is a good way to either decide if you have to pick one because of the sake of time and everything, like, do you prioritize special ed over the ELL part of it? Do you, if they're getting a lot of special ed attention, I feel like they're already getting a lot of the type of support that I would offer them ELL wise. So to me, I am more inclined, mostly with older kids, I'm more inclined to say, let SPED take the lead. But yeah, I just wondering if you have any feedback on how to maneuver that if you have like two different departments, both trying to work with the kid, and you can't like ask the kids to be online hours a day.
Yes, right. Rosemary, do you want to feel that?
Thanks, Jill.
Well, you have your background too.
A little bit, yeah. I think what you're doing is probably a good idea, especially like you said with the older kids. My initial thought was, if you can coordinate with, the special ed teacher and actually maybe alternate weeks, if that was some way you could alternate the schedule so that they're getting equal amounts of time with both. So that they're not inundated, with, oh, you've got this many meetings this week with the special ed services, and then you've got all of these meetings with the ELL as well. So I don't know how closely you're working with the special ed department, but if that's something you guys could do together, it's just a process of trying to figure out what works best, even on a one-to-one basis.
Mm-hmm.
So I like. It sounds like you are already taking that into consideration and making it work. So if there's a special schedule that you can work out together with the special ed department, I think that's a good idea. But I think, like you said, if they're getting the services from the one department and you feel like they're getting what they need, then I don't think there's any need for them to get more, on your end. So like you said, it makes more work for them. So
yeah, and I was thinking too, can you focus your efforts more on instruction, like support, language support, specifically, like doing little lessons online to engage them, so if for instance, they're working on something particular, you know, planning a mini lesson on skill development. You know what I'm saying? So that way you could kind of use the service to really, you know, embellish what's already happening with, you know, content, but then also you're connecting with them. You know, it's still relationship building, still gives them time to, at the end of the session, hey, you guys, what are you struggling with specifically? Let me know. Let's talk about it here. Let's address some of these things. But, you know, does that make sense? Yeah. Does anybody else have anything to offer or that they would like to answer?
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, to go along with Elizabeth's question, what about a newcomer, let's say a kindergartner or a first grader? No English whatsoever, and so I end up having them the majority of the day, but yet he's qualified for SPED. What happens then? How do I teach him? What do I teach him? Or do I share? Do I collaborate with the SPED teacher and share times with her? But she's monolingual. How, and of course, with all due respect, you don't need to speak the language to teach EL, but how do you work with them? What do you do? Do you end up taking that child the majority of the time, or is it SPED because classroom teacher really doesn't want him or her? And what do we do? What do I do there? Because we had that situation this school year.
I'm going to go, and Rosemary, chime in here. I'm going to say absolutely collaborate.
Yeah.
Collaborate. This is where the special education teacher can take the lead, but you need to bring your expertise to it and say, okay, tell me how best to teach this particular student. What do you feel based on what you understand about this student? This is what I need to do for my part, for my instructional role, but what is the best way to do that with what you understand? You know, so that's, I would always caution on defer to your case manager that truly understands the learning needs, and then you're coming in with your expert and you're going to kind of work that puzzle piece into the big picture. Even wondering, how much time do I need with this particular student? What do you recommend? Can we collaborate? Can we both be online with this student? Here's what I'm thinking of covering for a particular content, and in getting their feedback and their expertise. Okay. But doing a collaborative session and collaborative teaching, absolutely. I mean, just think of what you would do in the traditional classroom, and then you're just going to transfer it to the virtual one. Okay. You know, so you would be doing that, you know, in a regular classroom. Rosemary?
I'm sorry, were you talking to me?
No, I was asking if you have anything that you'd like to, or disagree with
most
me.
Of that. There's it's really loud. You can probably hear what's going on in the background.
So did you?
So, I think what you have is right. Hold on a second.
There's a lot of noise. Remodeling, remote learning doesn't go hand in hand.
There's a lot of noise today, but I agree, and it feels almost like your question is flip-flopped from Elizabeth's, where she's actually, you know, you're working with the student more in this case than the special ed department, or so I think, like Jill said, just collaborate and make sure that, you know, the needs are being met based on the learning plan. And it sounds like you already have a plan. So if you're working with that student, it's easier to collaborate with the teachers and let them know what's needed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
All right. So we have a few minutes left before our free Zoom room is going to close. Are there any other questions or anything that you'd like to cover that we didn't? And remember, on that sheet that we shared with you, that spreadsheet, our personal emails are linked there. So please feel free to reach out to us. If there's something that we can't answer, we work with an amazing team of experts in every content, and so we will have resources and answers for you if it's not already provided in this webinar and on the sheet.
And in fact, I would like to address some of those questions that you guys had with some of the experts that we work with, just to see their thoughts on that, because I feel like that's something that you guys need to, you know, it's good for us to know that that's out there too, so that we can answer those questions in the future a little better.
Yes. So anything else that you'd like to cover? This is just showing you what's coming up. And these sessions will be recorded. So we will, you know, starting on Monday, we'll record and put onto our the ILC website. So please be sure to, and I'm sorry, on the YouTube channel. So jump on YouTube. You could, you know, search iLearn Collaborative and subscribe to our channel, and you'll have access to all of our videos, including consulting videos and our open educational resources, our digital content warehouse webinars as well. Okay. All right. So with that, I want to thank you for attending. I know your schedules are insanely busy right now with everything going on, but thank you so much for taking time out. And again, if you want to follow up with any of the questions you asked, please reach out to Rosemary and me, and then we will further investigate, talk to our experts, and come up with some ideas for you. Okay. So
Thank you, guys.
Everyone.
Thanks.
Bye. Have a good rest of your day. Hopefully you'll get to enjoy some weather. All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.